Hello, everyone. How are you doing today? Hope you're all doing well. Um, I decided to come up to the school today to grab a couple of things, and I also wanted to record a lesson while I was here just to get back to a little bit of normalcy. If you notice behind me, I've got a couple of flags. I'm going to refer to these flags later, okay? The top one is the Union flag at the Battle of Fort Sumter, and the bottom one is the original Confederate flag. Okay, so I'm going to keep these two behind me during the video, and I'll refer to them later when we get to them. I hope you all enjoyed the lessons about the sectionalism unit. We are moving into the Civil War now, and we're basically just going to kind of set things up today. We're setting up the scenario of who is fighting who, what are the advantages, what are the disadvantages, where are these battles going to take place. Okay, so let me move myself out of the way here so we can see. So Civil War. Okay, we basically have the Union and the Confederacy. Now, in the Union, let me hide this out of the way so we can all see. The Union is the northern states. Our president in the Union is Abraham Lincoln, who was just recently elected in 1860. General Ulysses S. Grant is the leader of the military. Now, there are several generals throughout the Civil War, and Grant is the last general, and he is the one who is able to claim victory at the end of the war. But there are several, including a guy named George McClellan. If you do any research on the Civil War, you will definitely see a lot about George McClellan. But Grant is given the credit for winning the war. Now, the Confederacy, the leaders in the Confederacy, the Southerners, we have Jefferson Davis as their president. He is their newly elected president. And their general throughout the war is Robert E. Lee. Now, many of you may have heard of Robert E. Lee. He is pretty well known. There's even a car named after General Lee in an old show called The Dukes of Hazzard. And on the roof of that car is this flag right here. Okay, now this is the flag most of you are familiar with when you talk about the Confederacy. That is not the original Confederate flag. In fact, that is from one of the states that fought in the Civil War for the South, but that was never officially the Confederate flag. This flag right here, the Confederate flag, if you notice, there are 7 stars, and those 7 stars represent the first 7 states that joined the Confederacy to form their new country. Now, what's interesting is every time they add a new state, they add a new star. Now, in the North, you would think, well, if those stars are being added to the Confederacy, maybe there's stars being taken away from this flag. That is not true. In fact, it's quite the opposite. Because Abraham Lincoln never officially recognizes the South or the Confederacy as a legitimate country because he believes they never were able to break away in the beginning, he never removes stars from the flag. He wants it to be as though they had never left. Later on in this unit, we will talk about Lincoln's approach to the rebelling states, and that's how he referred to them, was the rebelling states, not the Confederacy. So there will be times that you hear me say that the rebelling states, and I'm referencing the South there, okay, and that's why they're called the rebels oftentimes. But Lincoln never recognizes the Confederacy as a legitimate country, and he wants to keep the Union together at all costs. So we will talk about that more later in the unit, and we'll even talk about it in our next unit with Reconstruction and how that relates to our country being designed the way that it is. Okay. Now I want to take a look at the map here. These blue states, okay, even the ones out in the West, including California and Nevada, these are the Union states, okay? Now, the red states, these are the Confederate states. Now, eventually, there's more than 7 states. If you want to count them together, there's a total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. I believe there's 12. Actually, I believe there's 13 eventually. States that join the Confederacy. Now, some of these states are border states, okay? Now, these border states in light blue, what's interesting about these states? Delaware, Maryland, Those are both slaveholding states that never officially joined the Confederacy. Um, Now, this state right here is West Virginia. And late in 1861, around November or December, I can't remember exactly, November or December of 1861, West Virginia, or these western counties, decided to break away from Virginia. And the reason they do this, they've got several reasons, but there are not as many slaveholders in this state or in this section of the state. And they don't want to rebel against the Union. They don't feel that it's necessary to join the Confederacy. So there is a split here. Now, we see several states split later on, and normally for a state to split away from itself or create a new state, you have to have consent from the original state or permission. Virginia never gives permission to West Virginia, but they kind of do it anyways. And it's kind of a special exception here because the Civil War is going on. The way things happen, West Virginia becomes a state during the Civil War, and it stays that way. It remains West Virginia until today. Another border state is Kentucky, and then a very important border state is Missouri. We've seen a lot of fighting going on in Missouri and Kansas stays part of the Union. This is where a lot of the battles were taking place before the Civil War even started about the issue of slavery. So it is important to take note of these border states. This is also where many battles take place, is right on the border between the North and the South. So there's going to be a lot of action here. Unfortunately, for the people that live there, they're going to be in the middle of it. Okay, so there's that. Now, some of the advantages, disadvantages of the North and the South. In the North, think about the North. That's where all the urban areas are. That's where all the cities are. And with more cities, that means there's more people. So in the North, they have about 22 million people living there at the time. And there's only about 6 million people in the southern states. So obviously, the North has a huge advantage when it comes to the number of people, because the number of people, usually that's going to reflect the number of soldiers they have. Okay. So the North definitely has the advantage with population. Resources, the North, they've got more factories and they can produce more food than the South. Now, when it says produce more food than the South is definitely an agricultural area, but they're growing things like cotton and tobacco, not so much fruits and vegetables like in the North and kind of the Midwest area or the Northwest area there of New York, Pennsylvania. They're growing more food, wheat. Remember, those are the breadbasket states, or what we used to call the breadbasket colonies. In the South, they're all about cash crops. So when it comes to resources, when it comes to food and things like that, the North does have the advantage. And the advantage of the factories, because they're able to produce their own goods, their finished products, they do have an advantage. The South, they're going to have a hard time with this. Okay. Transportation. The North, they've got more railroads, canals, and roads. They are definitely more connected. The reason for that is because there's more people. So the more people, more roads, canals, railroads, and also the telegraph. I know that's not on here, but the telegraph is a huge help to the North. They're able to communicate and travel much easier in the North than they are in the South. Now, leadership. When it comes to leadership, the North had Abraham Lincoln. Now, Abraham Lincoln, he was a great guy. He made some very tough decisions. There were some very questionable decisions he made, which we'll talk about later. But he was a great leader for the North. Now, he is a political leader. When it comes to the military, there was a lot of issues with the military in the North, and they never had a real strong, solid leader until Grant towards the end of the war. Now, in the South, Jefferson Davis had very little power as president of the Confederacy. In fact, if you think about the Confederacy and one of the things they're fighting for, they are fighting for the right for states to make their own decisions, which means there's going to be a lot less power for the federal government than there is for the state government. And because that's the case, Jefferson Davis really does not have that much political power in the South. However, Mr. Robert E. Lee here, General Robert E. Lee, he has a lot of power and he is very trusted. He's been through a lot. He's fought in several wars before this, including the Mexican-American War, and he is the leader of the South. And he is the one that makes a lot of the big decisions. and he is very revered in the South. In fact, one of the things that's interesting about General Lee is he lived in Virginia, and one of the only reasons, or one of the main reasons that he fought in the Civil War for the South is he was trying to protect his home state of Virginia. Um, he did not want to protect the establishment of slavery. That was not something he was fighting for. In fact, he did not have any slaves. So when you look at Robert E. Lee, you need to think about who is he and what's he fighting for. And really, he is fighting to protect his home in Virginia. He's trying to protect his family. It just so happens that his home in Virginia is part of the South. Therefore, his loyalty rides with the South. Okay. When it comes to military power, especially the Navy, the North has a much more powerful Navy than the South. The South has not really needed to create their own Navy. In fact, the Union, they pretty much hold ties to all of our military supplies at this time, which is why Lincoln was trying to get supplies to people at Fort Sumter, which is what kicked off this whole Civil War. So the North does have a huge advantage with having a Navy. The South, they kind of make do with what they have, and they do create some naval ships, but nothing very impactful that's going to help them down the line. So this is going to be a huge advantage for the North having a stronger Navy. Now, the big idea, the big plans for both sides. General Lee, most of his plan was to fight a defensive war. Now, what this means to fight a defensive war, this is a map of the South here, and this is part of the Northern plan. But the defensive idea is we're going to protect our borders from Northern invasion. And if we can protect our borders, then we're going to stay safe. We don't have to worry about the Northerners coming in and taking our land or taking our forts or trying to stop slavery. We're just going to fight a defensive war. We're not going to invade the North. Now, eventually this plan does change. There are a couple of situations where the South does invade the North just on the border in Maryland and close to Pennsylvania, but they never go all the way into the North. They don't try to take over New York or anything like that. But Lee does make the decision to invade the North a couple of times, hoping to end the war quickly. However, neither time it works out great for him. The strategy for the North, how are they going to defeat the South? The plan that they have is the Anaconda plan. This anaconda, an anaconda is a big snake. So if you see here, there's a big snake going around the South. And the idea that Lincoln had, or the strategy he was going to use, is he was going to set up a blockade on the Atlantic coast and not allow trade for the South to go in or out. So they're going to basically be on their own throughout the war. They're not going to receive aid from Great Britain or France. They're going to blockade any sort of travel between the South, between states like Virginia and South Carolina or Georgia. They're going to keep that from happening. They're going to make them have to travel by foot, which is much, much slower. The next part of this plan is for the North to try to take control of the Mississippi River. And if the North can control the Mississippi River, then they're going to be able to squeeze the South eventually. Okay, so the idea is, I'm going to get my camera back on here so we can see. The idea is we're going to try and get the South to suffocate. Okay, so I'm going to, let's see here. All right. I'm going to come over here to the big map so we can get an idea of what we're looking at. Okay, just like we're in class. How about that? Back at school. I really miss being at school. Okay, so you see here, this is the South, and the Northern plan is to set up a blockade all the way around. Okay, and if they can get that blockade set up, eventually the idea is we're going to do just like a snake does to its prey, and we're going to squeeze the life out of it. We're just going to squeeze. Okay, so if we can take control of the Mississippi River and we can take control of this border over here, we're going to squeeze in on the South and eventually make them give up. That's the whole idea of the Anaconda plan. And this is the North's plan in a nutshell. Now, I'm not going to give away all the spoilers, but they do win. And this plan it does work, and it is a good plan, and it proves to be really their best option for capturing the South and defeating the South. Okay. Um, I really hope that y'all are taking the time to watch these videos. I've noticed that some of you are struggling with the quizzes on some questions, and I do my best to get these questions answered in the videos. So if you're not getting the questions in the videos or the questions in the quizzes, I have a feeling you're not watching the videos, and that's not good. It's kind of like skipping class. Unfortunately, the people I'm talking to right now are actually watching the videos. So the people who are missing out, you're probably not seeing this anyways. But for those of you that are watching, thank you for taking the time to come to class. Thank you for taking the time to look at this material and understand it. If you have questions, please email me. Come to a live session. I'll be happy to talk with you about what's going on. And I hope y'all are doing well. Okay. Don't forget, wash your hands. Have a good day. Bye bye.